Hello there. Good evening, everyone, and wishing you a very happy New Year, happy Lori, happy Pongal, and happy Sankranti. Welcome to yet another episode of Employee Engagement Live. And I'm super excited because we had kind of taken a break, and this is one of the initial episodes of 2022. And I have a very, very interesting guest with us today evening. Once again, I'm Shrikant Acharya. I'm the CEO at offineeds.com, which is a leading corporate gifting and merchandise company. And I've been doing about more than 20, close to 24 episodes of employee engagement live. And I want to take a minute before I introduce today's guest. I want to take a minute to tell you why we do employee engagement live. The last 2 years have been absolutely chaotic. Nobody expected that all of us will be working from home, working remotely, working from everywhere. The hybrid situation is very, very new. The pandemic was unfortunate and absolutely unexpected. But work moved on. The markets continued. Job opportunities continue to be created. New hiring continued to happen. Most of us have teammates we've probably never met, and employee engagement has been a very, very important factor in pretty much any kind of a business in the especially in the last few years, but especially in the last 2 years it's become even more critical because you don't have the opportunity anymore to be able to walk across the aisle, tap on your colleague's shoulder, have some gossip in the lift and all of that stuff. So without any of those opportunities, how do you improve employee engagement? Because of the kind of business that we run, we had the opportunity to work very closely with some really large organizations and observe what they're doing to improve employee engagement. And we saw that a lot of other organizations were wanting information and knowledge about how employee engagement could be improved in these challenging times. So that's why I started this initiative where I started to speak to seasoned professionals from HR, corporate communication, and leaderships of different organizations across different sectors. And the program has been very, very well received. So I want to thank you. I know it's a Friday. It's Pongal and it's Sankranti. There's probably a festival happening at your house. And I want to thank and appreciate the fact that you've come here. And I want to assure you the next 45 minutes is going to be great, great use of your time. So, with that said, let me introduce to you today's audience, today's speaker. Today, we have Prajakta Kulkarni, who is the Director of Human Resources at CSG. She comes with about 15 years of experience in HR and in leadership roles, and has worked with organizations like Wipro, Accenture, Lenovo, and is now with CSG. She specializes in employee engagement, employee relationships, rewards and recognition, and employee experience. So I can't wait to get her onto the show and speak about all of this. So Prajakta, welcome to Employee Engagement Live. How are you doing today?
Hey, Shrikant, so good to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I am very well, thank you. How are you?
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let's start with the first question that I ask every single guest on my show. What, according to you,
Mhm.
Prajakta, is employee engagement?
Well, there's a straightforward answer to that, basically. And then there is a more interesting answer to that. But the straightforward answer is really three parameters, right? On which, if you look at it, any organization tracks employee engagement, which is basically say, stay, and strive. Say is, are you saying good things about your organization internally and externally? Are you recommending it? Do you think it's an employer of choice? Are you staying back, which is the stay parameter? And strive is basically all about discretionary effort, right? Are you going the extra mile? Are you doing more at your work? Are you really committed emotionally and rationally to your organization? And so I think these three parameters really summarize engagement or experience or whatever it is that, the term of the day that you'd like to use to categorize that.
All right. And what's the more interesting answer?
Well, the more interesting answer is that it really depends whom you ask. If you ask somebody in business, typically, what is engagement? They tell you, it's all about Rangoli competitions that these HR people do. And if you ask somebody in HR, they tell you it's all about retention. So, it really depends on whom you ask.
Right. All right. So we will ask Prajakta Kulkarni a lot more questions today. In the meanwhile, I want to invite the audience to have a pen and paper ready because this conversation is going to be very interesting. And if you make notes, I think you are going to find something interesting that you can implement in your own organization. And in a few more minutes, I'm going to invite you to address any questions that you might have directly to Prajakta, and she will answer them for you. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below, and she will answer them for you. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below, and she will answer them for you. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below, and she will answer them for you. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below, and she will answer them for you. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below, and she will answer them for you. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below, and she will answer them for you. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below, and she will answer them for you. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below, and she will answer them for you. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below, and she will answer them for you. In the meanwhile, if you want to say hi to me or Prajakta, type it in the comment below, and she will answer them
Hey,
for
Shrikant,
you.
sorry, I lost you there for a second.
Yeah, I think something was up with the internet. So I was asking you, what is the difference, Prajakta, between employee engagement and employee experience?
Well, I think they are both similar terms, but it really depends on evolution. So I think employee engagement has actually evolved into employee experience. So if you look at the journey, right, of engagement, you'll notice that it started with events. Like a lot of HR folks would do events, and we would all believe that that's engagement. And then we realized, okay, this is one part of it. This is important. But if you have to create really a culture where people are engaged and saying, staying, and striving, then only this isn't the answer. So then we started looking at how do we become part of people's careers. How do we ensure that there's a culture of recognition? How do we ensure that there's a lot more beyond just events? And that's, I think, through that journey is what has evolved as employee experience. And employee experience to me is nothing but creating moments that are relevant to the employee, right? Making them, because everybody is unique. Everybody has different needs, everybody has different triggers, different motivators. So what may be relevant to me might not be relevant to you, even in terms of recognition. Some of us want public recognition, some of us just want money, some of us want something else, right? So experience is all about how do I make it relevant to different demographics of the employee population that currently exist. How do I make it relevant to different genders, to different age groups, different generations? I mean, there's so many ways to cut and slice that. But yeah, basically making things and keeping them relevant for the employee, creating moments that matter.
Absolutely, creating moments that matter. And you rightly said, right? Some people like it private, some people like it to be to like get recognition public, and there's so many uh, people with different wants, needs, and different phases of life. So how do you make it relevant? How do you personalize? You can clearly not have one strategy that fits all. So how do you do this personalization?
So, a lot of firms have started using design thinking as a mode to kind of figure out and personalize this entire employee experience as a journey. So, that when I say journey, it starts from even before a person is hired, right? There are people who like to be headhunted. There are people who would apply. There are people who are silently looking out. So, right from that stage to the stage where they leave and still talk positively about your organization, right? So using design thinking as a tool to then personalize this journey, to create profiles, to understand your audience. I think that's where it really starts from, right? Whom are you hiring? What do they like? What are the demographic trends of this generation, of this age group, of this gender, city, state? So you can decide where you want to draw that line in terms of personalizing. And then I think so that's one part of it. And the second part of it is offering choice, right? Eh, To an employee, saying that, hey, here's a bouquet of stuff. What would you like out of it? Instead of me mandating that every year I'm going to give you this one gift, giving you a bouquet of stuff to say, hey, what would you like? Or, how would you like to be recognized? How would you like to learn? I mean, learning is such a huge thing these days, right? As part of the journey. Some people like self-directed learning. Some want to go to LinkedIn. Some want to listen to you and me talk. So, how do you like to learn? It's all about offering choice, understanding your audience, and then offering those choices.
Right, absolutely. I've heard this before, right? I've with a couple of other conversations, large organizations. I've heard how they do this personalization. To me, it sounds like a mammoth task. You have a small team. I have a small team. We about 65, 70 people. And what you're saying, the personalization approach seems okay. It's practical. Can get a handful even for a team like ours. But when you've got hundreds and maybe thousands of employees, how do you really do that? How do you execute that?
Well, the way I see it is that the HR teams, the central teams, the COEs that really manage this process are like the program managers of this whole thing, right? The
Mm,
responses and the audience has to be born from the audience. If I have to understand a certain group of people, then I
mm,
need representation from that group to come up and tell me what they think, because otherwise I'm just an outsider, right?
mm,
So, what larger organizations typically do is that they have communities who are,
mm,
as an additional role, take up, employee engagement, or as an additional role, take up diversity and inclusion, and or some of these
mm.
topics, and then become ambassadors and representatives of those specific groups. They're then
Right.
responsible for getting the voice of that group, bringing that out, sharing it out, and therefore being part of the whole creation of the journey.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Awesome. That sounds good. So this team that you're taking is beyond HR. It's not just restricted to HR. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. This team, anything that you want to do with the people cannot be done by somebody who's external to the people, right? It has to come from within. So this team is typically comprised of project managers, people managers, enthusiastic
Mm,
individuals across the organization who want to make a difference, who want to do something, differently, who want to share an interest, a point of view. They're all part of this larger team who then do a lot of, managing this on the ground, ensuring that the experience is similar, sharing
right.
feedback, which is such an important part of this whole mechanism.
Absolutely. Perfect. Really well said. We have Gautam who's saying hi. Hi, Gautam is joining from YouTube there. And there's something that I wanted to ask you, right? You just mentioned an important point. You spoke about people having different interests, different passions, different hobbies, and they all coming together to make this happen. On that note, of late we are seeing that a lot of people bringing their personalities to work, right? About 10 years back, 20 years back, it was unheard of. You just come to office, do your work, go back, and on weekends do whatever it is that you want to do. But now it's not like that. With social media, with Instagram, Snapchat, there's a lot of interming, and especially now that everybody is working from home. So how, from an employee point of view, as well as from an employer's point of view, how do you balance this personal passion and hobbies versus professional work?
I think it's a great question, Shrikant, honestly. There's a lot of organizations that have started talking about work life integration, right? That
Mm,
your work and your life are not separate, they're all integrated in that sense. That we expect you, just even from a health perspective, we want you to bring your heart, body, mind, and soul to work, bring your whole self to work, right? That's like a theme these days in terms of doing all of this. So there was actually this very interesting practice that one of my previous organizations used to do, and in fact, we helped create and curate that practice when we were there.
uh-huh.
But it was called, it was a program called My Experience, right? That
Okay.
used to run in that organization. And it had various streams to it. There was a health stream, there was a career stream, there was interest, and there was this one stream called My Passion.
Mm,
So in this stream, people could create communities virtually, and at that point we were in person, so therefore in
mm,
person, to
right.
practice their passion in office. And if
Mm,
their passion was at a certain level, then
mm,
the company would even sponsor them to
mm,
participate in tournaments. For example, we done a survey initially to find out what level of passion even currently exists. If we had to create communities, what would they even look like?
right.
And you won't believe the kind of responses we got. We had people who were badminton players at a country level, at a national level. We had
Wow.
archers, somebody who participated in Olympics. We had somebody who was, who played test cricket, and things like that. So we were like, wow, this is so cool. And then based on that, we created multiple communities. And my understanding is that this whole ecosystem is become self-sustaining as of late.
Mm. That's
So
amazing. That's uh, really interesting to hear. So, what are you mentioned about cricket? You mentioned about badminton. What did you come across any hobbies which really surprised you?
well, archery was one that definitely surprised me
Archery was
because
one. Yeah.
when we heard that lady's story, she started archery when she was 6, and I was
Mm.
like, wow, I have a 7-year-old. I've never thought of putting her up for archery. It's not a very
Wow.
common hobby. And we even
Yeah.
had stuff like chess. We had people who played carom. We had people, who did some form of golf and polo and things like, which are not very, very common in nature, but obviously pursued quite a bit and with a lot of passion across, different people.
Right, right, right. So, what's the benefit that you're seeing from an organization point of view, right? Why this change? Right, 10 years back, this was not there. Right now, I know at CSG you're encouraging people to log off early, and on Fridays you're logging off really early. And why? What's happening? Why? I'm even hearing about companies experimenting a 4-day work week. So, what's
Mm-hmm.
happening? Why are organizations encouraging people to work less?
Well, I think it's all about, I mean, not all about, I think a lot of it is about mental health and the
Mm,
focus on mental health these days. Because when you say bring your whole self to work, the whole point of doing that is to be mentally, physically, emotionally healthy, right?
right.
Because we realize that just sitting in front of your laptop and working for
Mm,
10, 12 hours doesn't lead to productivity. Neither does
mm,
it lead to better work. Neither is it a show of commitment, right?
mm.
So a lot of these older concepts that used to exist, that if I'm working 12 hours, that means I'm like the most committed employee, or things like that are obviously going out of the window. Those were older
Right.
concepts from a different generation, and I think
From
we're
the
moving
industrial
more.
era.
Exactly, from the industrial era. But I think now we are moving towards a more balanced work life integration, right? That
Mm,
if I am spending so much time at work, then how can I utilize that time to also refresh myself mentally? How do
mm.
I tie myself to this organization as well? It's also a retention measure, honestly, because if
Right.
I have a community, right, of people, when I leave this organization, maybe I'm getting paid better elsewhere, right? That's always one of the reasons one leaves. But then
Mm,
there is a pull for me to stay back because one of my best friends is here, right?
mm.
With whom I play carom, and I'm really, really going to miss that.
Right.
So that is something that helps me stay back. That's something that I would personally consider. Whenever I've left an organization, more than anything else, it's always been the people that you don't see the next day that you kind of end up missing the most. So the whole point is to create this community, to make it binding, to create a pull, to make sure that people have fun at work.
Right, right. Awesome. Very well said. That's a great point that you brought up. So let me ask you a question that's kind of connected to that. It was probably the bonding, the relationship, the friendship was probably deeper, and I would say probably easier to create when you were there in office. Last 2 years, none of us have gone to office, and we don't know what the future of work is. So my question to you is two parts. One is, how is it different in the current remote working situation, creating this community? And the second part of the question is, what do you think the future of work is going to look like? Are we going to come back to offices, or is it going to continue this way?
Well, the answer to your first question is very easy. It's very difficult. I don't think anybody has found a formula to create these communities. And honestly, see, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, which basically talks about safety and security at the base, and
Yes.
then moves on to self actualization at the top. I think with the whole pandemic, we were at the top, but all of us as a community have come back to the base, right? None of us is worried about creating communities. Nobody is worried about, how can I do my hobbies or how can I pursue my interest. It's all about safety and security, right? Are my
Mhm.
kids going to school? Are they learning at online school? Am I
Correct.
getting my work done? Is everything okay in my place? Is my family
Mhm.
fine? I think in this context, I, my personal belief is that our focus should be on creating a safe and secure environment and
Mhm.
a way which, again, like I said, experience is something that has to be relevant to the group. There's no point creating communities when I'm worried about,
Correct.
my parents at home. I'm not going to be participating in those.
Mm.
So, and I think to that effect, something that CSG has done, the second part
Mm.
of your question, is really
Mm.
cool because we've announced a permanent work from home. right,
Wow.
for everybody. So we've said
Okay.
that, go ahead, work from home wherever you are. In fact, of our current, I think almost 1,800 people, 60% are not even in Bangalore, and they haven't been for the last 2 years. And I
Mm,
don't think they even intend to ever come back, because most
right.
people are like, why should I come to Bangalore and spend money on rent and pay excessive schooling and pay
Correct.
5 times for house help when I can stay at home, be with my parents, with my family, with my cousins, friends, whatever that looks like, right?
Right.
Versus doing all of this shuffling. And so I think that to me is a very good example of experience, because that is the need of the hour. That is what is most
Mm,
relevant to the employees today.
mm,
That,
mm.
I don't have to worry about going back. I don't have to worry about traffic. I don't have to worry about 9 to 5. I work as long as I have an internet connection and I have a decent camera. We're okay to work from wherever we are. I think that's really worked well for us.
Awesome. So, first of all, kudos to you for having taken that decision. I think that's a very brave move. So, does that mean you've given up your office spaces or shrunk your office spaces or something?
Not as yet. Our office spaces continue to be. So
Mm,
for those people who want to come into office, the office is open. The office infrastructure is in place. So we're
mm,
using things like, instead of having cabins and rooms dedicated, we're doing hot desking and stuff like that.
mm, mm.
So yes, to a certain extent, that might help us optimize. Perhaps in the future, we haven't really gone down that road so far. But yeah,
Right.
office space is open for those who want to. But
Mm.
neither are we encouraging nor are we discouraging. The point is, do what's comfortable to you.
Right, right. So, do you see any trend towards if you're saying 60% of the people are not even in Bangalore, there's no way they're going to be able to come to office. So, do they have an option of going to a co-working space, or do they have something like that? Are you seeing a hybrid, distributed work environment coming up?
We haven't had any asks so far, honestly. So
Okay.
those people who have gone home, I think they're very happy continuing to work from wherever they are. So nobody has made an ask for distributed workspaces so far. But I think that's more to do with the fact that kids are not yet going to school, right? We're
Mm,
still online. I think
right.
once that trend changes, we will see a trend with parents also being like, okay, what am I doing at home? Maybe I should also
Mm.
be somewhere. So I think, and of course, people will still need flexibility at that point in time. But I think
Right.
maybe at that point we'll see change. As of now, people I think are just happy working from home.
Awesome. Fantastic. Love it. This is very, very exciting new stuff that's happening. So let's switch gears a little bit. You spoke about using design thinking in the context of employee experience. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what we've done in one of our organizations, actually, last couple of organizations that I worked in, is that we've always used design thinking whenever we have to design anything, right? Whether it
Mm,
is any sort of a people program. So,
mm,
what we typically do is that we create profiles of the audience that currently exists within
mm,
our
mm.
organization, either by
Right.
gender, by age. So, it's a mixed bag. And then
Right.
we get people from these profiles to come and
Mm,
participate in a day long workshop or half day workshop, where
mm,
we give them problem statements and we say, hey, this is the problem statement, this is the audience that you're solving
okay.
for.
Mm,
Now, using these tools, what do you think will work the best? So
mm,
every work group then goes to work on their profiles and using their tools, and then comes up with a solution. And we
okay.
encourage people to think out of the box, right? There's an exercise actually in design thinking which says, think of the most outrageous solution, right? So it's a lot of fun also, because you have all sorts of outrageous solutions, right from becoming a fairy to having a genie to whatever that looks like. And then we kind of bring that back into looking at more sustainable solutions. So it's a fun process. You should try it out sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that. So tell me, what is the most outrageous solution that you came across? The wackiest, most outrageous solution, whether you implemented it or not, and what was some of the most interesting solutions that came because of this exercise, which you implemented?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some of the wackiest are like anything you can imagine, that, some stuff from your dreams, perhaps, leaving this planet, moving to another planet, creating spaceships. There was somebody who said that, why do we need anything? Let's just find a lamp and a genie who will take care of all of this as and when we want, so outrageous can be anything, right? Out of the
Right.
box. But the point of doing outrageous is basically getting that creativity flowing, right? Because first, solutions are
Yeah.
outrageous, And then
Correct.
as you talk about it, different people find different ways to say, hey, if this is not possible, maybe we can do that. And then you actually come to a solution which makes a lot of sense. We've made a lot of smallish process changes to a lot of people programs that we've run, right? From the way people are rewarded, right? We went from having one or two things to having a bouquet of things. And those
Mm,
bouquets were actually designed from the design thinking workshop saying, this is no longer relevant. The Gen Z does not appreciate any of these things. Here's a bunch of stuff that you can actually do and things
right.
like that. So we've had a lot of good solutions coming from the people, from
Mm,
those groups. So that has
right.
been good.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. So I want to ask you, how is employee engagement changing? What was employee engagement? What is the definition, and what was considered good employee engagement 5 years back? What is it now, and what do you see happening in the next 5 years?
Absolutely. I think 5 years back, maybe employee engagement was all about that one annual survey that organizations would run year on year, right? Which asked you how engaged you were. There were possibly 20 questions on it, and then you took the survey, and
Right.
then there were a set of actions that would come out of it. Like I was saying, it's evolved, just like everything else in the world.
Yeah.
Engagement or experience, whatever you want to call it, has also evolved, right? From
Right.
there, we have moved to quarterly surveys, we've moved to real time surveys, and now we
Mm.
have tools, right? Who ask you milestone based questions. You've just had a promotion, there'll be a quick chat box that pops up. I don't want to take the names of tools that we've used, but quick chat box that pops up saying, hey, how do you feel today?
Correct. Mm.
We now have mood indicators, which
Right.
on your system will tell you what's the mood of your organization today, now, half an hour
Correct.
earlier, things like that. So it has
Yeah.
evolved to a large extent with the whole technology piece coming in very, very strongly. Right.
Right.
And now it has moved to a place where it is experiences about creating those moments, making things relevant, ensuring that, whatever you're doing is something that your audience needs versus just something that, you have to do for a checkbox. So
Mm.
it's seen a complete evolution, I think, in that sense.
Right, right, right. Awesome. So, in the same context, how is the role or the function of an HR professional changing 5 to 10 years back versus now versus the future? Because we are saying, like you said, 10 years back, everybody thought the HR's role was doing rangoli competitions. Right now, we are calling HR business partners, and we've even seen. HR directors going on to become CEOs of companies in some multinational
Yeah.
global companies, right? And so what's happening? What is it 10 years back? What's it today? And what's it going to look like, say, in 2030?
Well, like you rightly said, I think previously it was more about HR used to sit outside of the business, right? The
Mm.
business used to run, and whenever they had problems, challenges with people that they couldn't deal with, they would go to HR. HR would step in, have those conversations, and
Be the bad
conflict
cop.
management. Be the bad cop, manage the conflict, negotiate, influence as required. At that point, also HR were business partners, right? And even today, I think what has happened is that the integration with business is something that has happened very, very strongly to your point in terms of saying that today HR has a seat at the table, right,
Mm,
in the boardroom, outside of the boardroom with the people. In fact, at
mm,
CSG, we even have a chief diversity officer now who directly
mm,
reports to our CEO, right?
mm.
Initially, diversity used to be another arm from HR, but now people have realized the importance of having thought diversity or any form of diversity in the organization. So,
Right.
some of these functions, you can see them how they've evolved. So today, HR sits at the table, has
Mm,
conversations around budgets, has conversations around
mm.
high potentials, around employees, around, even we're even having conversations around what other locations should we expand to. And HR is very much part of all the strategic conversations that happen today in
Right.
boardrooms. So I think that is where we are. And in future, I honestly don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you what the future looked like. But I think there's going to be a lot more specialization in HR, right?
Mm,
I think there's going to be just the way we have generalists today or the business partners, like you call them. I think there's going to be a lot more specialization. We already have something as an employee experience specialist. I've seen so many
mm.
roles,
Yeah.
that show up saying employee experience specialist. Earlier on, this role did not exist, but I think as we go along, this is one thing that'll really become stronger. I think in the wake of pandemic, benefits is something that's going to take on a very, very important role, right?
Right.
Health and safety is going to take on a very, very important role. And I think mental health and belongingness, and all of these things are also going to take on very big roles going forward. And I think that HR people are well poised to take on all of these roles. And I think, my personal opinion again, I think these specializations are going to grow.
Right. Awesome. I think that's a great prediction. I'm with you on that. We're moving from a generalist role to a specialist role, and to be able to make it more effective for organizations. So, if you have um, any HR professionals here who are in the early phase of their career, or some students who are considering starting an HR career, what's your advice for them?
I think my advice for anybody who wants to be in HR is first understand yourself, right? Because I think self awareness is a trait that every HR professional needs to have. And it's only through self awareness that you can understand what's happening in your environment. So I think first focus internally, understand yourself, have a high degree of self awareness, which will help you navigate the challenges that exist within the system. And I think the second good one for me would be have a growth mindset, right? Be open to experiences, try new things, get out there. Even if you don't start in an HR role and you navigate to it later, or you're in an HR role and you navigate out later, just be very, very open to new things, new experiences, new technology. I think that's where growth really comes from.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. I think that's fantastic advice. So, anybody here who's in the audience, in case you have questions, now's a great time. Put it out here. I'm going to direct it to Prajakta. While we get any questions, we might Prajakta a few more questions. That we're some of these terms that we are hearing, right? Diversity and inclusivity and mental well-being are quite new, right? We have not heard these in the corporate lingo before, right? So what's changing, and why is diversity and inclusivity, and specifically well-being, mental well-being, becoming so important?
Well, like I was saying earlier, right? I think we're all realizing the importance of having diversity in the organization,
Mm,
because there has been a proven link, and there is a proven link, right, from diversity that fuels into innovation. So, if you
mm,
want to have a forward thinking organization which thinks out
mm,
of the box, you
right.
have to have different sets of people. Now,
Mm,
what that different set looks like is something that you can decide, right? Diversity, inclusion, and equity, as it's called these days, spans various things. It could be genders, which is typically what it tends to be in a country like India. But across the globe, if you look at it, it could be gender diversity, it could be thought diversity, it could be race diversity, it could be
mm,
age diversity in certain countries, it could be generational diversity, right? So diversity can be anything, just getting people in who are different from you, right? Because not everybody is able to deal with differences. As human beings,
correct.
we find change hard. We like to
Mm,
be with people who are similar to us in some respect. We relate basis that. Getting out of that mindset and saying that, okay, I can, somebody who's a little different from me can add more value than I can, or a different type of value, is a hard mental shift to make. But I think it's a mental shift that a lot of organizations are making, and I think that's great.
mm. Right. Awesome. And why is mental well-being being spoken about so much now?
Well, what can we say? It's the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
First, you got to be physically well, then you got to be mentally well, because we're all sitting at home, right? You
Mm,
started off the talk, Shrikant, saying that there are no chai time conversations, there are no gossip
correct.
sessions with friends, there's no chai and parleji happening somewhere in some corner of the cafeteria anymore. And
Correct.
I think those, I was reading an article recently, I think those were called loose tie relationships. And they
Mm,
really led very positively into mental wealth, mental
mm,
health and mental well-being. Since those
mm,
are not there, we've seen the rise of depression, we've seen the rise of anxiety,
correct.
we've seen the rise
Mm,
of, just mental discomfort, being mal at ease with who you are, what you're doing. And this whole pandemic has changed so many things for so many people,
mm,
right? People
yeah.
have lost friends, family,
Correct.
close relatives, things like that.
Mm,
So
mm,
obviously, mental health has therefore kind of come to the fore, because we're like, you have to be able to, do good work. You have to be able to bring yourself, like we were saying earlier, into your work. So if you're feeling, and the thing is, in a culturally in our country, we don't speak about these things, right? We don't
Mhm.
speak about depression and anxiety, and we don't speak about mental health. So it's
Correct.
become more and more important to talk about
Mhm.
it, to normalize it, right? Normalize mental health is such a big topic for all of us today,
Right.
and say that it's okay. We're all
Right.
humans and we're all okay.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. And you, I think you put it really, really well. And it's important that we don't shrug it under the carpet and we talk about it openly, especially in these pressing times, because we don't know whether that one person whom you could open your heart to is accessible. Are you in a position to be able to reach out to them or not? Right. That's very, very, very well said. Um, so I have a few more questions which I want to ask you, but before that, I want to ask you about the role. You're clearly wearing a CSG T-shirt right now. You
Yes, I
and I know
am.
you, and I know you played instrumental role in setting up a brand store at Lenovo as well as a CSG. So you're clearly a believer in using merchandise. So tell me a little bit about the role of merchandise in employer brand building or in employee engagement.
Absolutely. I think merchandise plays an important role. Like you can see, I'm wearing one of your brand store t-shirts actually
Yes.
for CSG. So I think it plays an important role because brand as a concept is nebulous, right? You can't point out and talk, say this is a brand.
Correct.
But when you have something in your hand, a mug, a t-shirt, a pen, or something that shows you the brand, that's what makes it real. So
Yeah.
I think that's what merchandise really does. It translates a concept into something that's real that you can touch, feel, and see. So I think it's
Right.
really important, especially in these pandemic times, because I
Correct.
felt a lot of pride when I walked into my CSG office every day. The colors, the
Yeah.
seating arrangement, the vases, the books, and I used to look around and I used to think, I'm so lucky. This is such a beautiful place. But I don't have that option today. So I think
Correct.
today it's become all the more important. If I can create an environment that looks a little bit like my office, then that's going to
Mm.
make me as a person happier. So absolutely.
Absolutely, really, really well said. Because I keep saying that when somebody got their first job or when they change their job, the first day at work experience is very exciting. You go to a brand new building, you go check out the gym, the cafeteria, and the lobby, and you take selfies, you put up on social media, saying, and you make new friends. That's a very the first 2 3 days is very exciting, right? But now we
Absolutely.
don't have any of that. When you change a job or get a new job, all that you're changing is the laptop, and maybe in the
Yep.
same room, and you're staring. So that the merchandise definitely brings a tangible element. It's something that you can hold, that you can probably share with your family. I think that's very, very well put. Um, Prajakta, can we speak a little bit about what role does rewards and recognition play, and how do you design a rewards and recognition program? Because I know you've done that in a couple of earlier and current
Right.
organizations as well. Can you speak to us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think reward and recognition is a very, very important factor. It motivates people to do more. It recognizes. So it's a double-edged thing, right? It motivates you to do things, and B, it also ensures that everything that you do gets recognized, right?
Mm,
And then therefore that further motivates you to be more emotionally committed, to be more rationally committed to the organization. So
mm,
it's clearly one of those key drivers in any HR program that you would see.
right.
So there's a lot of debate actually around it, that should people be intrinsically motivated? Should my work not motivate me to do better? And things like that. Obviously, there's a lot of debate and very interesting conversations going on around some of these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And I think to me, it feels like a combination of two, right? A,
Yes.
my work has to be interesting enough. I should be really engaged with my
Yes.
work, right?
Yes.
And then once I do good work, I should be recognized for it, saying that,
Right.
hey, that was well done, and things like that. So I think that these two elements make the two key pillars of a good recognition program. That people are skilled, have the capability, are enabled
Mm,
to do the work that they are doing. They're
mm,
interested in the work that they're doing, and then they get recognized for doing a great job.
absolutely. Spot on. I think that's a fantastic answer that you've given, because both of these without each other will not be, are going to fail. If the quality of work is not interesting or not challenging enough, and you just have great rewards program, it's just going to be a lip service. And a great, very challenging work without rewards, without a recognition program is probably not going to go that extra mile. And I think in this context, HR having a seat in the board makes a big difference, because that's when you're
Absolutely.
able to build that balance. Otherwise, you're only doing building one side of the story without having any contribution to do on the other side. So let's take just last couple of questions before we wind up. We have another few more minutes. So
Mm-hmm.
there is something that we're seeing. We're hearing the words the great resignation, and we are hearing the words war for talent a lot more. That
Yeah,
basically means the HR job has become so much more challenging right now, right? So talk
it
to us a little
has.
bit about what is the great resignation, why are people resigning, and why is there such a big war for talent?
Well, why are people resigning? I think there are two parts to that story. I think the
Mhm.
first part is like everything in the last 2 years, pandemic,
Yeah.
right? In the first 2 years, if you look at the trend of hiring, in the first year and a half of pandemic, a lot of people were let go. A lot of people
Mm,
lost their jobs. A lot of businesses were
mm,
struggling.
mm,
But as we moved into the second year, what I think globally has been noticed as a phenomena is people figured out how to work around it, right?
mm,
Telecom organizations, internet-based services, all of them picked up really, really well, right?
mm,
So I think businesses figured out how to work through the pandemic, and they decided, okay, we haven't hired for the last 1.5 years. Let's open up
mm.
hiring now,
Right,
and that's also visible through the results, right? The financial results of most organizations went up.
right. Mm,
That's one part of it. I think the second part of it is our wonderful startup community, right?
mm,
The same thing happened with a lot of our startup community, right? A lot of them decided that they figured out a way, and
mm.
and I'm calling them out separately because there's a trend with them, in terms of hiring, especially.
They're the ones who are making your
So,
life miserable.
what can I say?
Right.
I know, but so and they started, and the community decided that they're going to hire. So I think these
Mm,
two big factors have led to, it was an employer market, right?
yeah.
About 2 years ago when the pandemic started. Today it's become an
Mm,
employee market. To me, it's like
right.
it's the basics of economics. It's supply and demand,
Mm,
right?
right.
Currently in the market, there's a lot more demand than there is supply, and therefore it's an employer
Right.
market, and therefore there is the great resignation, right? It's just basic
Right.
economics. Everybody who I saw this meme the other day about resignation. It started off saying, you resign. Once you resign, then you put post on LinkedIn saying, I have resigned, I am now open to work and can join
Mm,
immediately. Once you put that, you take 5 offers from the market. Then you do an auction with all the HR employees saying that, who's going to pay me more. And in the
right.
last day, before you actually join, you take up the sixth offer, which none of what was offered to you and is much more than all of your offers. So it was just a meme. It was meant to be funny, and it was.
Right.
But I think that's really
Right.
the reality. People have multiple
Yeah.
offers. That's the great resignation, and it's okay. It's a part of the economic cycle. It will correct itself.
Right. Right, right, absolutely. Because we all know people take up offers and don't show up, right? That's happening a lot more
Absolutely.
frequently, and I think we've come across cases where people have taken up two jobs and working at two jobs simultaneously. Is very
Okay,
few,
that's
but
crazy.
that's crazy.
That's
Yes, it
crazy.
is. All right, we have a question here from Girish. He asks, what are some of the important activities of employee related to employee engagement that can be done in the current pandemic situation? We're in the middle of the third wave that's there. So in the context of to kind of address that, right, through the pandemic, we've seen three waves. So what have you seen being some of the most effective activities or strategies or events that have been done to improve employee engagement?
Great question, Girish. Thank you for asking. I think, like we were saying, right, going back to our Maslow's hierarchy, I
Mm,
think, figure out what your audience wants.
right.
Just taking activities from here and putting them there may or may not work. Your audience may be very different, maybe at a very different
Mm,
place. So always figure out what your audience wants and then do that, right?
mm,
That's what I would say. But I think to your point, Shrikant, in terms of what has worked, I think any focus on mental health has worked. We, for
mm,
example, at CSG done multiple. We've had a lot of we've initiated a lot of counseling for employees and things like that, and we've gotten great feedback for some of
mm.
those things, and they've really made an impact. So I think
Right,
that has been good. And
right,
of course, the whole flexible work from anywhere model is something that our employees have really, really appreciated to say, okay, this makes sense. I don't need to worry about which school my kid needs to go to next year.
right.
So
Mm. That's amazing. Awesome. So it's been fantastic, Prajakta. It's been an amazing, amazing conversation. And to kind of add to the last point which you just said, I think my learning has been just ask your employees. They'll tell you what they need, right? So in business, I've learned just ask your customers. They're going to tell you how to run business, what products they want, what solutions they want, and just implement it. It's as straightforward as that. And don't have to be, I would say use your own brains to come up with something that might or might not work. Uh, just ask your employees and they will tell you. And sometimes some things might be outrageous, but there will be some gold that will come out of it, right?
Absolutely,
uh, Thank you,
absolutely.
Prajakta, for your time, and it's been wonderful, wonderful speaking to you. Look forward to an opportunity to meeting you again. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, and I want to thank all everyone in the audience for taking your time off and being here on a Friday evening. I hope you found value in this conversation, Prajakta. I hope you had fun.
I had a lot of fun. Thank you, Shrikant, for having me. This was super fun. And yeah, I look forward to meeting you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend, Prajakta, and thanks everyone for joining once
Thank
again.
you,
Have a great
everyone.
weekend.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.